Hello, everyone. Sharon Reed, Michael Schur, no Cenk, no Anna. They've earned a day off. Besides, Cenk is all over the place, making the rounds, representing progressives in fine fashion. You've probably seen him. Where has he been? TMZ. Well, he's just been all over. Michael, esteemed journalist, TYT contributor. It seems like we were just together.
It does. We were together on Dr. Ritchie's show. You know, when people don't show up, we do. So that's a nice thing. And,
No.
and as we speak, Cenk just texted me. So I would argue that he's not doing anything that's productive for progressives or anything. He's texting me, which is,
Okay, well, that means he's watching or something. And so I better behave myself. And
he's telling me, talking to me about football, one or the other. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So he's not critiquing us. Okay.
Right.
I'll be my same old self. Okay. But we're going to begin with this one, free speech warriors.
Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else. And he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Notice how everybody who disagrees or even criticizes the president has zero talent. It's just a coincidence. Here's what's going on this morning. That was President Donald Trump stating that comedian Jimmy Kimmel's ratings were actually to blame for the suspension indefinitely of his show, rather than the actions of his own government, as if he had nothing to do with it. And as if that wasn't enough, Kimmel is now being pressured to make a donation to Turning Point USA. We're going to get to that momentarily, but first, we have to rewind a little bit for you. Kimmel came under fire for comments he made on Monday about Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, the gentleman by the name of Tyler Robinson, who's now in custody, not talking still. We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. Jimmy Kimmel hosting his show on Monday. So yesterday morning, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr suggested that Kimmel's comments could lead to consequences from the government. Here is one of his thinly veiled threats.
A lot of these licensed broadcasters themselves push back on Comcast and Disney and say, listen, we are going to preempt, we are not going to run Kimmel anymore until you straighten this out, because we licensed broadcaster are running the possibility of fines or license revocation from the FCC if we continue to run content that ends up being a pattern of news distortion.
All right, there you have a head of the FCC, the Commissioner Brendan Carr. Now, according to a report from Rolling Stone, those comments absolutely terrified ABC executives. In the hours leading up to the decision to pull Kimmel, two sources familiar with the matter say senior execs at ABC, its owner Disney, and affiliates convened emergency meetings to figure out how to minimize the damage. Multiple execs felt Kimmel had not actually said anything over the line. The two sources say, but the threat of Trump and his administration, retaliation, loomed large. ABC's decision to suspend Kimmel's show came shortly after Nexstar, which owns local television stations, announced it would no longer air the show. And keep in mind that Nexstar, see, it's all related, you just have to connect the dots, is seeking FCC approval for a multi-billion-dollar merger with Tegna, its smaller rival. They need something from the Trump administration. And Michael, we know that a la CBS, Paramount, other people who've disagreed or not towed the line, the administration is not going to just greenlight anything. It's quid pro quo oftentimes. Do you believe that Nexstar just independently, without having any intervention, decided that's egregious and we're not going to air Jimmy Kimmel anymore? Or do you think they had a little push behind the scenes?
Well, I think both, actually. I think, Nexstar owns News Nation. They are a conservative leaning operation. They are not Fox News, but they certainly lean to the right. And for full disclosure, I worked for News Nation, good people, but the business side is what the business side is. The other part of it is that they were one of the companies rumored when ABC might be spun off by Disney. They're one of the companies that was rumored to be in the market to purchase ABC. And in purchasing ABC, so you have the heads of ABC here, Bob Iger, the head of Disney, Dana Walden. They're the ones that apparently made this decision on Jimmy Kimmel. Well, they also want to make sure that they're not upsetting anybody who might be in the business of buying them. I get it. Business is business. I'm not in it, but I get the people are in it to do well and have sales and make money. But when you hear him say that there's a pattern of news distortion, but Jesse Waters and Sean Hannity don't get called out and they don't get boycotted and taken off the air. This is Jimmy Kimmel, a comedian who is objectively a funny comedian. It's not, just because Donald Trump doesn't find him funny, that he is not the last word clearly on what is funny. So I see so much going on here, so much at play, but the bottom line is it's censorship, right? And we are now protecting the Second Amendment and deciding the first one doesn't matter.
Yeah. And if Kimmel is your sense of humor, if you like to laugh, he's off the air indefinitely. I don't know, maybe he'll hit a comedy club. I'll tell you who's laughing big time, okay? Belly laughs, okay? Probably doubled over. Donald Trump. Last night, Trump rejoiced over Kimmel's suspension. Here's what he wrote. Great news for America. The ratings challenge, Jimmy Kimmel's show is canceled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Kimmel has zero talent, worse ratings than even Colbert, if that's possible. That leaves Jimmy and Seth, two total losers on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also horrible. Do it, NBC. President Donald J. Trump. Like I said, he's barrel of laughs. Official White House rapid response account had a more concise message. Here's that. They're doing their viewers a favor. Jimmy is a sick freak. Is this for real? Right. This morning, Carr sat down for an interview with CNBC about Kimmel's suspension. He stated that this story isn't about the government threatening media. Rather, it's about media companies getting a permission structure to end shows with bad ratings. Listen.
I think there's a much bigger shakeup that's underway right now. I think people, again, try to focus narrowly on the specifics here. But if you just back up, I think ever since President Trump won the election, it's created a permission structure for markets, including the media market, to rationalize. I mean, again, if you look at the ratings for late night television, they've been in an absolute nosedive for years But for some reason, these companies felt like they had to continue to subsidize it. And I think that's ending. And again, I think your viewers get this, but think about the business side of this. You have the national programmers, Disney, that create this content. And you've got individualized licensed TV stations all across the country. And they're required, they've been for years, required to respond to the needs of their local communities and viewers. And I think it was those local communities and viewers that were saying, we don't like this stuff anymore.
This is all about ratings and local viewers, grassroots. Let's look at Kimmel's ratings. Annual Nielsen ratings compiled by industry site Late Nighter show Kimmel averaged 1.77 million total viewers per episode last year. It is down 2.3% from the year before, 2023. New York Post with that. According to monthly Nielsen figures, Jimmy Kimmel Live dropped to just 1.1 million total viewers per episode, August 2025. That's down 43% from January's 1.95 million. Later, CNBC host David Faber asked Carr straight up if the government is targeting shows that make fun of Donald Trump. And here's how that went.
I do wonder, and I think many people do, whether you really are just targeting comedians who who typically through the years have made fun of political figures in a way that because the president simply is offended by it.
No. Look, again, broadcast TV is different. We're on a cable show right now. You don't have an FCC license. You don't have an obligation to serve the public interest. Podcasts don't either. Stand-up comedians, whether they're on lots of forms of communications, don't. And Kimmel is free to do that. But if you have a broadcast TV license, that means that you have something that very few people have. And you're excluding other people from having access to that valuable public resource. And it comes with an obligation to serve the public interest. And again, over the years, there's been a rule in place at the FCC that local TV stations get to preempt programming that they don't think meets the needs of their communities. But recently, these national programmers, ABC, Disney, Comcast, NBC, they've been exercising outsized control and power over those local TV stations, and there's been no pushback.
Something about the way he said outsized control and power.
Yeah.
It's incredibly ironic. Just a little bit more, Michael.
Yeah, just one thing here. Just a little bit ago, Donald Trump in the United Kingdom said the federal regulators should revoke broadcast licenses over late night hosts who speak negatively about him. Right. So we all know that what Johnny Carson did to Richard Nixon and to Jimmy Carter and to Gerald Ford, how they made fun of Ronald Reagan, that it's been fodder for late night hosts since the very beginning. And that's all it is. It's fodder. Yeah. But one person has no sense of humor, and all these other presidents apparently took it tongue in cheek. Maybe they were offended by it, upset by it. Maybe Gerald Ford was upset by Chevy Chase, falling down and coming in and saying live from New York, imitating a stumbling president who, by the way, was the best athlete president we've ever had. So I don't know. This is about Trump, because Trump is saying it's about Trump. It doesn't matter what Brendan Carr says. It matters what Donald Trump says, because that's all that matters to Brendan Carr.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My little sister. We do something, maybe get in the candy jar we weren't supposed to. And she just, can you just keep the story straight? When the parents come asking, and he won't even keep the story straight.
Yeah.
He's giddy. You won, dude. You don't like Jimmy, and you can't even keep the story straight. The locals did it. Nope. It was about you.
Right.
There's even more, Michael. CNBC host Jim Cramer brought up the fact that Kimmel, and I think we need to do some kind of check. I want to make sure he's not disappeared. Is he okay? Just off the air? Kimmel's now being pressured to donate to Turning Point USA. Watch what Carr had to say about that.
According to the New York Times, late Wednesday, I'm just quoting here, Sinclair, another owner of many local TV stations, said that it would also suspend Mr. Kimmel's program and called on Mr. Kimmel to apologize and make a meaningful personal donation to Mr. Kirk's family and the activist political group Turning Point USA. Do you think that's an appropriate remedy of the situation?
I think Sinclair has every right to call for that. Again, Sinclair affiliates with Disney. They take Disney contract. They have a contractual relationship with Disney, and that's between the two of them to figure out, what's going to make sense to make both of them comfortable with the relationship going forward.
That's just it. I'm not sure it was just between the two of them, Sinclair and ABC, Disney. Let's end with Trump, who has continued to comment on Kimmel throughout the day. Here's what he said during a press gaggle.
Look, he was fired. He had no talent. He's a whack job, but he had no talent. And more importantly than talent, he had no, because a lot of people have no talent, they get ratings. But he had no ratings. His ratings were worse than Colbert, I think. They got rid of Colbert, which was a good thing to do. And look, that's something that should be talked about for licensing too. When you have a network and you have evening shows and all they do is hit Trump. That's all they do. If you go back, I guess they haven't had a conservative on in years or something, somebody said. But when you go back and you take a look, all they do is hit Trump. They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that. They're an arm of the Democrat Party.
By the way, how is Gaza doing? That horrific conflict where so many people have died. And Ukraine, Russia, what's going on there? It's ironic that the leader of the free world, who was just with the King of England, who, don't they roast the royal family all the time over there? I think it's ironic that the King of England hasn't tried to, and I mean, listen, the royals and the whole arm that's behind them put out narratives, but no, it's an American free speech president who says you can do anything you want that I tell you. And by the way, you can't criticize me. I mean, it's just, well, I guess it's the new American way, Michael.
Well, apparently, and what are they doing now? What are the ABC and Sinclair stations doing tonight? They're putting a 1-hour tribute to Charlie Kirk in place for the hour that would have showed the Jimmy Kimmel show. Jimmy Kimmel is hysterically funny. I'm not just saying that. I'm saying that because nearly 2 million people at a time where everyone is cutting the cord still tune in to watch Jimmy Kimmel each night. And that is an important and huge number for broadcast television. The president is wrong. Jimmy Kimmel's ratings are superb, considering the climate of television right now and how late night television is not what it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. It just simply is not. And that's okay. That's how things have changed, and people get their entertainment elsewhere and in very divided and less segmented ways. The fact here is that Donald Trump doesn't like being made fun of. He has people who will kowtow to everything he says. And I should say that many presidents do. They just don't have this kind of adherence, nor do they make the kinds of demands that Trump makes. So that's a little different. I mean, presidents surround themselves with yes people, right? All the time. It's why Team of Rivals and talking about Lincoln's cabinet was so unique, because he had people there who were different than he was. But you surround yourself by yes people when you're the president, generally speaking. Donald Trump does it in a way that these people have this, and not only are they so devoted and so loyal to a fault to this guy, and curiously to so many of us, but he demands more of them in regards to loyalty than any other president has. And that's the difference right there. And this is what you're seeing now with Kimmel getting canceled. Here's what Donald Trump has assured us of, though, that the highest rated television show that will ever be broadcast will be when Jimmy Kimmel returns to the airwaves, whenever that will be.
He didn't think that far ahead. I think you're exactly right. And I think it's even more this cult-like insulation that he's built around him, these yes people who he's not loyal to at all. This whole situation where, look, Nixon toyed with it, right? He wanted the FCC to go after his detractors, but there apparently weren't enough people around him who said, yeah, let's do this thing. He found resistance. Not anymore. Right. He's telling us how to feel, what to think, what to say, what to do. I'm more mad at, because I expect this from Trump, Michael, and I'll give you the last word. I'm more mad at ABC, the law firms, everyone who capitulated. It's eroded so much I don't know how we get it back.
Yeah, the universities, everybody. The only person who hasn't capitulated is Ghislaine Maxwell, and that is that's what we should be talking about. Is Jeffrey Epstein? That's where Trump's loyalty lay.
Yeah. Well, good reporter with a British accent asked him about that across the pond. Much more to come. Stay with us. Okay, we'll get back to the stories in just a moment, but now let's continue the conversation with your comments. New TYT members and donations, we always appreciate you, appreciate the conversation. Ashura Izumi, yeah, I agree. We don't have free speech in this country, never have, otherwise certain people of color would still be alive. We have corporate speech and far right speech. I mostly can agree. And it's the corporate speech for me, because I think it's, listen, you protect hate speech. You don't protect stuff that we generally can agree on. Okay, New York pizza's good. Okay, we can agree. We can agree on that. It's the hate speech. I don't want to be around certain people who spew nonsense. I don't want to listen to it, but they should absolutely have a right to say it. Sexy speed racer, Nexstar plus Tegna, one step closer to monopoly. Break them both up now. Yeah, whatever happened to that? That to me is one of the larger issues. And I know, Michael, they can't survive, they say, unless they stay big and the carrier fees and this and that. And so many of us choosing to go streaming, cut the cord, all that stuff. But this is not good. This is actually horrible. And it is the epitome of that thing that we hate when Trump uttered it, and he had a different meaning, but this is turning into fake news.
Yeah, well, the media monopoly decree, and it's going to show us how Larry Ellison and his son are, and it was written about today in the New York Times, are going to be able to acquire Warner Brothers and CNN, and they already own CBS, the consolidation of media, and they are taking it toward the right. This is, the courts, there will be antitrust lawsuits and action. Whether or not those are taken seriously by the courts is another story. But it seems like we are going down the road of antitrust violation and monopoly at every turn in the media world right now.
Yeah. And some people don't see it. It's not for the better, as the FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr says, the local people weren't getting the services over the airwaves that they're entitled to. Yeah, right. Next comment, I live in America. The right comparing what happened to Kimmel to people being canceled before, like Roseanne, Tucker, etc., is the absolute stupidest thing I've ever heard. This is not the same whatsoever. I don't know. I'm going to pause again and ask you, Michael, what do you think about that? Because I do remember there were a lot of cancellations here from, what was the radio guy? Don Imus, right? Passed away.
Don Imus, yeah.
People that I didn't necessarily care for. But if Roseanne wants to moon and do a horrible rendition of Take Me Out to the Ball Game, this is America, right?
Yeah. You can say these things, and what Kimmel said. Let's talk about the content of it. Come on, it wasn't that bad, and if it was bad, he's doing another show the next day, and that will be in the ether. Do you know what he did the night before? I don't. Right? That's what these comics do, and these hosts do. They take their time with a monologue, and then they move on.
Okay, more of your comments coming up. Welcome back, Sharon Reed, Michael Schur. And one other thing we should mention, you know what Jimmy Kimmel did in the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder? He posted something very beautiful online, and I'm not trying to give him over credit, for this, above average credit, but it was decent. And what he said was, this man should be here. Can we just pause for one moment and say, no matter what you believe in, this gun violence is just disgusting, paraphrasing. And he wished the Kirk family well. He sent love and prayers from his family to theirs. So this was before all this, before he was canceled for saying, well, we're still, what did he say that was, like you said, so bad? But this is the climate we're in. The next one we're calling cooked. Trump administration has asked the US Supreme Court now to let it fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. If the court greenlights this, it would be another extraordinary move that could reshape the Fed's independence and, of course, expand the president's power even more over the economy. Solicitor General D. John Sauer filed the emergency request, arguing Trump had 4 cause to remove Cook under the law governing the central bank. The administration points to allegations of mortgage fraud, charges Cook denies, and that remain under Justice Department investigation with no indictments filed. The reporting shows documents, though, that appear to contradict the administration's claims. And let's pause here, Michael. I want to get your prediction. What are the odds that Donald Trump's captured Supreme Court and his buddies on it hear the case?
Well, I think the divided appeals court leads me to think that they will hear the case. It was 2-1. It was 2 appointees from, I don't know if they were Biden or Obama appointees, but they were appointed by a Democratic president, and 1 appointee who was a Trump appointee who divided on the issue of whether or not there was cause for this. My tendency is that they are, and listening to what Sonia Sotomayor has said recently, is they are tired of this emergency docket on the court, and all of these fall under emergency docket cases. That said, it's a divided court. It's a 6-3 court, and the Chief Justice seems to be okay with it. It's some of the other justices, even in the majority, who aren't. Whether or not they take the case, I'm terrible at predicting the court. I'm not a lawyer. On its surface, it seems like this is the kind of thing that should wait until it has been litigated before it is ruled upon. And that's what the courts have said. The lower courts have said, including this one. It was a majority. And the Supreme Court, generally, when these lower courts say these things, if there has not been litigation, they turn it back to the lower court. But because the president has had such success doing this, they're taking it to the high court. I'm going to say, just so we have something about which to be optimistic, that I don't think they're going to take the case.
Okay, I hope you're right. But do you see what happens when you capitulate time and time again? The dog wants another treat. The child won't take a nap. You got a monster on your hands.
Right.
So he keeps doing this. You would think that with Donald Trump, you're going to get it either way if you don't do what he wants. But I would think it'd be slightly less if you just, on whatever ground, say, well, this isn't our protocol. We're not going to hear this one. It's not, in the best interest overall or something. We're not going to do it. But that's not what
these are people that don't need to kowtow to the president, right? They have lifetime appointments. They are above reproach. They are insulated from any kind of inaction. As a matter of fact, that was a huge problem with Samuel Alito and the flag that was flown, and some remarks his wife made to a reporter, is that there's no oversight for the Supreme Court. The Congress, before it changed over, was going to take that up as an issue, right? That there should be some kind of recourse that you have against the Supreme Court for misconduct. But these are the kinds of people that do not need to remain loyal to Donald Trump. There's no better job that they can have, and they have this one until they don't want it. And that's what's so curious about this fealty that even these justices are experiencing.
Yeah, it feels like everyone's spineless. What is it? You can't take the wrath. And I'm not saying you watch something like January 6th that they can't really have a go at you, but
yeah,
it's somebody has to do something here. To quote a Atlanta housewife, "Who gonna check me, boo?" That's basically what Trump is saying every time he wants something.
I was just about to use that same quote.
Sheree Whitfield, I think, season 7.
Noted. Yeah.
Cook, one of 7 members of the Fed board, just voted in favor of lowering interest rates during a 2-day meeting earlier this week. Trump has long, of course, pressed for deeper cuts. Cook argues her removal is a pretext to stack the board with loyalists who will bow to the White House's pressure. Federal appeals court temporarily blocked Trump's effort on Monday, ruling he violated Cook's rights by failing to provide notice of the allegations or a chance to respond. You're dead on with this one, Michael. The judges, Bradley Garcia, J. Michelle Childs, both Biden appointees, sided with Cook. Trump appointed Judge Gregory Katsas dissented, saying he had no right. Lisa Cook had no right to due process. Supreme Court could rule within days. If it agrees to hear the case, it will join two other high-stakes disputes, testing presidential authority, Trump's sweeping tariffs, his effort to freeze billions in foreign aid approved by Congress. Federal Reserve, nation's most powerful economic policymaker, now the latest independent agency Trump wants control of. And, I heard one analyst today say, Michael, that it's like the bully who demands $1 on the first day. And if you just give the bully the $1, the next day it's going to be $5, and it's just going to keep going up. And even within the Federal Reserve, why won't the chairman say anything? I really keep pointing to cowardice. It feels like everyone's afraid because there's not like backup. People will always bend to Trump.
I mean, obviously that's true. I don't know though that it's the place of the chairman of the Fed to stand up for a member of the Fed. I don't know that it's not either. I don't criticize the chairman for not speaking up here because these people are all appointed, and they all serve independently. And I think that when you start protecting the group, it takes away a little bit of the kind of independence of each member of the board. And so I'm not going to put him in with the spineless others here. I'm gonna question how an appeals court judge can say that someone doesn't have the right to due process, and that's their reason for voting against it. And if the Supreme Court is dealing with something to do with due process and they're denying this woman her due process, then it seems to me as a non-lawyer that something there is broken. You don't surrender your right to due process just because you think that you're right and they think you're wrong. There is a process that happens. It's a litigation. And until that's resolved, there's no reason that you should suspend this person from or terminate this person from the board. But I don't see it the same way with, should the head of the Fed be responsible? I think that it's a different dynamic that exists there.
Yeah, I hear you. I guess I just meant I wish he would stand up for the, ironically, independence of the Fed. Whether I agree with my neighbor to the right or the left, they have a right to be here unless proven otherwise or something. Right. But listen, all that's true. Everyone should get due process unless they're, I guess, the old school king, a dictator, authoritarian, right? And so that's
or the new school president,
right? Anointed by his friends. One travels in a gifted Winnebago, I believe, or on a yacht, gifted private tours and things. It's just wonderful, wonderful. But hey, that's where we are. Any final thoughts on where we go from here? Because he really is taking over, it seems, attempting to, and being successful in more ways than one, these independent agencies. And do you think that them lowering the rates after, we're independent, they bucked, they did what they felt was right, most people would argue, but now they have cut the rates. Do you think it had anything to do with Trump and the constant badgering?
I don't. I mean, I think that this is a fiercely independent, as you were saying, he should stand up perhaps and say that we're an independent branch, but I think that he does so by not lowering them when he doesn't lower them, and by lowering them, when he feels and their board votes for that they feel that it's appropriate. So I don't think that, I think they're the ones that, that are the most independent, the most standing up to, Powell's like, fire me, right? Fire me if you want, but this is the job I was sworn to do and I'm doing it. And I think they're lowering rates and they're forecasting lowering them again, maybe even 2 more times before the end of the year. That's what the Fed chair does, right? That's why there may be problems with the Fed, and that's a totally different conversation. But I don't think that their independence is challenged, and I don't think this is a question of being back on their heels or afraid of the president. I think it's one area where we're not seeing that happen. I don't even know that the Supreme Court is doing it out of fear. I think that they're doing it because they're all strict conservatives, those six, and who fall off of the conservative wagon once in a while. But I don't think it's about fealty to the man as much as it is to the notion of conservatism.
Conservatism that does not seem to hold the ideals of that document. What's it called?
Right. The Constitution. It was Constitution Day on Tuesday or Wednesday was Constitution Day in this country, and look what happened to the Constitution.
Maybe he's going to rename that too.
Right.
Who knows what he'll call it? Antifa.
Given with all that's going on with Charlie Kirk's assassination and the left-wing, a lot of left-wing violence going on, do you plan on designating Antifa finally a domestic terror organization?
Well, it's something I would do, yeah. If I have support from the people back here, I think we'd start with Pam, I think. But I would, if you give me, I would do that 100%, and others also, by the way.
I'm disgusted when reporters give him ideas. It's just, he was going in another direction. Just one day after being asked by a reporter if he would consider designating Antifa as a domestic terror organization, President Donald Trump did just that. He moves quickly. There's not even a committee or let me run this by my advisors. I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention to this matter. He offered no other details on how this would be carried out. There are multiple problems here, of course. First of all, Antifa is not one group with a leader. They have no organizational structure. That's by definition kind of what they are. Mark Bray, historian, author of Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, describes it like this. It is essentially a kind of coalition politics of all kinds of radicals from different kinds of socialists to communists, anarchists, more independent radicals. Sometimes I compare it to feminism. There are feminist groups, but feminism itself is not a group. There are Antifa groups, but Antifa itself is not a group. Historian at Rutgers University, author of Antifa, the Anti-Fascist. Trump's own former FBI director, Christopher Wray. Here's how he described Antifa: a movement or an ideology, not an organization with a clearly defined hierarchy that would facilitate a terror designation by the government. Second of all, there's no legal mechanism in the United States for labeling purely domestic organizations as terrorist groups. For Trump to follow through on his social media declaration, his administration would need to create such a mechanism. So again, they've given him an idea, and that's exactly probably what'll happen next. 2023, the Congressional Research Service wrote a report about the federal government's role in combating domestic terrorism. They explain that the US doesn't provide public explanations of groups it considers to be domestic terrorist organizations because listing groups in this way may infringe on First Amendment protected speech or the act of belonging to an ideological group, which in and of itself is not a crime in the United States. For now, maybe. So now there is concern that designating Antifa as a terrorist group will be used to justify further crackdowns on the left. Here's David Axelrod explaining.
What it means is he will define, just as they will define the public interest, they will define what is Antifa, and they will go after everyone and everything that they put under that umbrella, even though it isn't an organization. It is in many ways mythology, but it gives them a pretext to go after their political enemies. This is going to be a major effort to try and defund any opposition in this country by doing it under this rubric of Antifa and the radical left.
Michael, isn't that really what it's about? I mean, there's never been a more successful, can we call MAGA an organization? I don't know, this got the one dictator, but anyway, of defining. Trump has defined what's American, what's patriotic, what's evil, what's good, and now Antifa.
Yeah, and you also, I mean, going back to the stage and area where this question was asked, this is a hand-picked White House press pool. So the notion that they would be giving ideas to Trump rather than the opposite is actually very, very questionable. So you also have to look at who was asking that question. Who was right behind him? Brian Glenn, Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, who is the head of, Right Side, or, I don't even know what it's called, Right Side Broadcasting Network, or Real America's Voice, something like that. And he asked a question just after, or perhaps just before, asked a question of Trump if a lot of people feel threatened by the LGBTQ flags that are lining DC, should we be taking them down? And the president says it's not a bad idea, but I would be probably sued on all that free speech stuff. Okay, so that's who's in this crowd asking these questions, right? They want to put this in front of the president so that it gets legs, but they've been told to do that in many cases themselves. This is part of the agenda that's going on here. So as absurd as it is, and to have a foe, how can you fight a foe so deadly when you don't even know it's there? I mean, it doesn't exist. This is a diffuse group of people and ideas, and there's no organization behind it, but having this kind of boogeyman is exactly what they want to do. And it gives them an opportunity to be more dictatorial, which is what they want to do as well.
Yeah, and thank you. I feel so silly for the reminder of what much of the press corps following this president has become, infused with these ideologues and yes people. I guess I was thinking, of that other era, pre-Trump era of these journalists. Remember Sam Donaldson?
Yeah, of course.
Shouting. I mean, oh my goodness.
Hold on, Mr. President. Hold on, Mr. President. Yeah.
And I loved it. Sharon Reed, Michael Schur, much more to come. And including Kamala Harris, that new book. And what's going on with VEEPstakes? We're right back. Welcome back. Many of you already weighing in on Trump designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. Juan June says designating Antifa as a terrorist organization is like appointing the mighty Morphin Power Rangers as law enforcement. It's not a thing, you orange clown. I should fit the quotes up. Nerd Ferguson. Yes, listing groups this way would impinge on First Amendment protected speech. And if I know anything about this country, it's that it will always defend First Amendment rights. Can we pin it on that? Will people be, it is the core of who we are as Americans, Michael. Could that be enough? Rally around the Charlie Kirk, whether you agreed or not. Hate speech, bring it on. You have a right to say it. Maybe this could do it. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. It could do it, right? This could be the clincher, right?
Or not. We'll see.
Yeah. Or not. That's the response I was setting you up for.
Yeah, you teed it up. real nice and soft. Embedded dude, welcome to MAGA TV, entertainment to put you to sleep. I don't know, Donald Trump, from his days on The Apprentice, he is scripting all of this, isn't he? He is like a conductor orchestrating all of this, not just the media, but how things are rolled out, how he looks, the music, the red carpet. Dragon with girl tattoo. No donation would get Kimmel's show back. They would just take the money. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, when you're dealing with people who have a tendency to change their minds, I believe in abortion rights. Oh, now I'm staunchly pro-life and holding a Bible upside down. I don't know what would happen with Jimmy Kimmel, but I do know this. Give the money and there's always going to be strings attached. You're never going to be a free, in this case, man, comedian again. It's done.
Well, that's true because of the avenues down which you have to go to do your comedy. I suspect it's always been that way. These networks have always been a business, but they've never been a business that had to answer to an activist FCC that is empowered by a president who wants to be dictatorial, and that's the difference.
Yeah, I mean, even with ABC, the money paid out. What Stephanopoulos said or didn't say, it seems the settlement undermines your own value and product here. So it's, you might as well fight, but I'm poor. What do I know?
Right. Yeah. And like Fred Silverman was the target of Johnny Carson's jokes. And he was the head of production at NBC then. You could make fun of your bosses. Now, God forbid.
Yeah, I loved it. Welcome back, Sharon Reed, Michael Schur. Let's continue with VEEPstakes.
To his former high school football players, he was coach. And in 91 days, the nation will know Coach Waltz by another name, Vice President of the United States.
When they write these books after performing like that, and having people believe them, why would I ever believe them again? Here's what's going on in her upcoming book. Kamala Harris reveals that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was not her first choice for running mate, but ultimately she went with Tim because he was a safer option. Her first choice, former Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg would have been an ideal partner if I were a straight white man, but we were already asking a lot of America to accept a woman, a black woman married to a Jewish man. Part of me wanted to say, screw it, let's just do it. But knowing what was at stake, it was too big of a risk. And I think Pete also knew that, to our mutual sadness. Harris goes on to explain how close the two were, stating he was, quote, a sincere public servant with the rare talent of being able to frame liberal arguments in a way that makes it possible for conservatives to hear them, especially during the pandemic. Buttigieg did become sort of a household name and spokesperson for the Democratic Party, going on right-wing networks like Fox News to tout Biden and his agenda. After Biden dropped out of the race, Buttigieg was suggested as a possible running mate by allies who touted his high name recognition and ability to act as an attack dog. They also noted his age, just 42, would help Harris make the race about generational change and distance herself from then 81-year-old Biden. Harris wrote about how her life was upended when she became Biden's running mate in 2020, and her awareness that she was about to cause the same sudden swerve in someone else's life. But yet she ultimately went with Walz. The Minnesota governor had burst onto the national stage weeks earlier with a series of buzzy national cable interviews. And Harris has said that she liked his mix of Midwest folksiness and progressive bona fides. But after a well-received convention address, Walz became something of a non-entity on the campaign trail and turned into a middling performance in his one debate with J.D. Vance. Buttigieg did seem to be a favorite among voters, according to ABC News Ipsos poll released in July of last year. Buttigieg was viewed favorably by 29% of respondents, with Mark Kelly coming in second at 22%. Following them, Governor Gavin Newsom, California, 21%, and Governor Whitmer, 20%. Shapiro came in at 17%. Tim Walz only had 6% favorability. Regardless, would things have been different if she'd chosen Buttigieg over Walz? Probably not, according to some Democrats. Ahead of the 2020 election, Harris moved to the left, along with most presidential hopefuls, many primary voters, a shift that included an embrace of progressive policies on issues such as policing and immigration. The party debated gender politics, such as pronouns, transgender rights, and there was a heavy focus on the backgrounds and identities of its candidates. By 2024, Democrats seemed out of step with a country that appeared more focused on kitchen table issues. The Atlantic filling in some of the details on this one. I think I learned something. I didn't realize, Michael, how close she and Buttigieg were. But as I was chronicling that for the audience, I started thinking about something, just the way my mind works. Do you think there's a possibility that she didn't go with Buttigieg, regardless of what's written here? Because when you're picking a vice president, maybe it's geography, but it's also, I don't want you to upstage me. I don't want that. Do you think possibility of what could have also been behind this?
And when you are a sitting vice president, anyone you select because of the sort of nothing image of that job as vice president, anyone you select, you run the risk of being upstaged. When Al Gore, a vice president, because the nature of that job is so dull, he selected Joe Lieberman. Even Joe Lieberman was electric compared to Al Gore at the time. When Walter Mondale selected Geraldine Ferraro, the same thing happened. You're actually looking for someone to upstage you in a way because your position is so dull that you do want something. The same thing, George H.W. Bush selected Dan Quayle because Dan Quayle was young and handsome and much more vibrant and vital, it would seem. So I don't think that. And I think this is kind of a nothing story, which is not to disparage us talking about it or selecting it, because it's an interesting conversation nonetheless. There are 25, 30 people that Kamala Harris could have selected to run with when she was vice president. And each one of them knew that the other could be selected. I would imagine the Governor Walz knew that Secretary Buttigieg could have been selected and may have been the first choice. The calculation you make when you are doing this is that it's your first decision. It's the first thing you do. And if there's anyone in America who thinks that Kamala Harris lost the presidency because she selected Tim Walz, they don't know enough about politics. It doesn't matter. People don't vote for the vice president. He was perfectly acceptable to a lot of the progressives in the party. She lost because of what you just talked about, which was kitchen table issues and the ability of Donald Trump to say your gas prices are going to come down and your egg prices are going to come down, and all they care about are gays and lesbians and transgender people. He said it, they bought it, and that was that. He may have, it may have been different. We'll never know had President Biden bowed out earlier. Perhaps it would have been, perhaps it would have made no difference. Perhaps it would have made the loss even more devastating if they went through a primary, selected a candidate in the traditional ways, and that candidate also lost. Who knows? At least the Democrats can say, well, we had a truncated election here. We weren't able to get our ideas around. Let's try and do it again next time. So that's why I think this is a nothing story. I don't think ever that the vice president matters unless they totally screw up. Had we known about John Edwards, that he had a family out of wedlock, that would have been a bad choice, right? When those sorts of things. But I don't see this at all in that way.
We're going to move on, but quickly, do you believe that, why is she writing the book? Besides the money, perhaps relevancy, will the book do enough to distance her from what she knew about an aging president, competency? I don't know. What's her reason for doing
I
this?
think what's interesting about it is the 107 days. It was a unique presidential campaign. I'll read anything by a former candidate. I think that there's some candor here, most likely. She lost, and she's a vice president. I don't think she will be president. I don't think that she's a viable candidate because of the fact she's from California and Gavin Newsom is from California, and they go to the same places to get money, and those people have already given to Vice President Harris, and I think now they're going to give to Governor Newsom. But I think it's interesting. I think it's part of political history, and as someone who likes politics and likes history, I'm interested. But it's nothing more than that to me.
Yeah, I love it. I do. Chris Van Who.
We need to start now shaping the future. It means supporting our Democratic nominee in New York City's mayoral race, Zohran Mamdani. Yet, many Democratic members of the Senate and House representing New York have stayed on the sidelines. That kind of spineless politics is what people are sick of. They need to get behind him and get behind him now.
Direct shots fired. Senator Chris Van Hollen is taking those shots at Democratic leadership for refusing to endorse New York City mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani. Now, other Democratic lawmakers are sharing their frustrations as well. Unsurprisingly, that got under the skin of House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and his team. Van Hollen made the comments at the Polk County steak fry in Iowa over the weekend. They came after months of Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries repeatedly refusing to get behind the Democratic nominee in the New York mayoral race. Here are just a few times they've dodged questions about endorsing him.
The DNC posted in support of Zohran Mamdani's campaign. You've met with him twice, and stay tuned, declined to endorse him. Are you out of step with your party on this issue?
I don't know. I guess people are going to have to figure that out.
It's pretty unusual for a high-ranking Democrat like yourself to withhold the endorsement of your party's nominee for candidate for New York City mayor.
I don't think we've withheld an endorsement. We are engaging in a conversation about the future of New York City.
Why are you not endorsing the guy that won the Democratic primary in a contested election in your backyard?
Well, I look forward to sitting down and talking to him. I didn't get involved in that primary election, and I don't know him well.
What do you say to people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who say that it's time for leaders like you to get behind Zohran Mamdani or risk losing a mayoral race?
We met yesterday. We had a good meeting. We know each other well, and we're going to keep talking.
So what you're saying is you're not going to endorse him, okay? Just be honest about it. Jeffrey's team deeply offended by Chris Van Hollen calling them out. Justin Chermel, one of his spokesmen, responded with this. Leader Hakeem Jeffries will have more to say about the general election well in advance of November 4th. Meanwhile, confused New Yorkers are asking themselves the question, Chris Van who? So cutesy. Adding to their bitterness is likely the fact that during the same speech, Van Hollen called out the Democratic Party for being weak and easily corrupted.
Democratic Party, we've drifted. Too often we have come under the sway of powerful moneyed interests at the expense of working people. And we've become a party that too often trims its sails, too cautious, too rudderless, too attached to poll-washed and pundit-rinsed and donor-dried messages. What comes out of the wash is all bleached and blow-dried. We also need to stop deluding ourselves that the problem is all about messaging or volume or style. We don't just need to fight, we need to fight for something. We must be ready, as FDR was, to directly take on powerful special interests, whether they be big oil, big pharma, big tech, big AI, big banks, Wall Street, or other powerful interests who are calling too many of the shots in Washington.
Polls show lots of Democratic voters agree with him. July AP North poll asked respondents to share the first word on or phrase rather, that came to mind when they thought of the Republican and Democratic parties. And here's what came out of it. Overall, roughly 1/3 of Democrats described their party negatively in the open-ended question. 15% described it using words like weak, apathetic, while an additional 10% believe it's broadly ineffective or disorganized. Again, Van Hollen is not the only Democrat fed up with leadership's unwillingness to endorse Mamdani. Axios spoke to multiple progressive members of Congress who are growing increasingly agitated at Hakeem Jeffries for not yet endorsing him. I think there's frustration, said a senior House progressive who told Axios the issue came up multiple times during the Congressional Progressive Caucus PAC retreat. Another member had this to say: we just can't keep saying we have to stand with our Democratic nominees and then make exceptions when we think they're left of us. It's just inconsistent, hypocritical. Makes some of us wonder, is this a leader that truly represents me, or will this leader discard me when people think I'm too progressive? Jeffries claims no member of Congress has expressed frustration to him about the mayoral race, but that's not true. According to the progressives who spoke to Axios, one said, there's a number of them that are talking directly to leadership saying, you don't get to say you're a leader and not lead. Look, this stuff seems very simple here. And the answer is yes, they will discard you if you're too progressive, right? They want to keep control over the party, Michael. I like what Van Hollen said there. It was like he was running through the forest, naked, unafraid, saying whatever he wanted. And ironically, he was just saying what the actual people who consider themselves traditional Democrats are already saying.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's taken a lot of people to a minute to warm to Mamdani in New York. The other part of the conversation is that you have a Democrat in the race still in Andrew Cuomo, and he's a Queens Democrat. Hakeem Jeffries comes from Queens. So too does Greg Meeks in Congress, Grace Meng in Congress. None of them have endorsed Mamdani. So there is some belief that a lot of these people didn't get to where they were without the help of Cuomo's, which is about as big a name in Queens politics as there can be right now or ever, and that will fade. Certainly should he lose. So I think a lot of that has to do with local politics. The other part of it is that Hakeem Jeffries would be that loyal, pick the Democrat all the time, if it were a House race. I'm not defending Jeffries here, but it's not as important for him. It's not as devastating for him not to endorse in a mayoral race, and he has the cover for Cuomo. As far as Chris Van Hollen is concerned, I mean, Chris Van Hollen on this is a great voice. He was the head of the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee when I guess it was 2018 when they actually made some inroads. He is well liked. He is running for something here, and I would imagine he's running to be the next majority leader or minority leader in the Senate, putting his name in there, not ceding it just to Chris Murphy, who a lot of people think would get it when Schumer leaves. But the other side of it, the best thing that can happen to you in politics is to have somebody put who after your name, because then everybody wants to know. There was a famous Time magazine cover that said Jimmy Who with a picture of Jimmy Carter, and within months he was the nominee.
Look at that.
That is really, really good for a politician. He's also taking some of the mantle of what Bernie Sanders would do. Van Hollen's probably in his mid to late 60s. He's a younger version of a senator who could be firebrand when he wants to be, and you're seeing it on display here. So people look for the void and they try and fill it. As far as Mamdani, I think Kathy Hochul, the governor, gave a lot of people cover. Eventually they're going to come around to it, especially if Cuomo's numbers don't get better in that race as it gets closer.
You really think that the cover, Jimmy Who, took him from a peanut farm to the presidency?
Well, it certainly helped because it got people's attention, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they put it on buttons after it was on. They put it on hats and T-shirts and everything. So Jimmy Who was a big part of getting him national attention.
Wow, I love it. All right, that's going to do it for the first hour. Michael Schor, we appreciate you. Continue to follow your great work until we meet again. They're up next.
The most popular online news show.
Favorite news platform by far. Oh, it's not even close.
Been on YouTube for 20 years. The Young Turks.
The Young Turks. TYT probably needs no introduction.
A true lefty, Cenk Uygur.
Cenk Uygur.
Cenk, so great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you, David.
Fan of your work for a long time, man.
Anna Kasparian is one of the most followed and influential progressive women online.
I love Anna.
Your presence has been essential for me to really grow.
Do all of you know the Young Turks? This is why what Young Turks are doing is so important.
I've watched you for many years. You are insightful. I thank you for that.
I was going to introduce myself, but it sounds like you guys might know it.
Ring the bell on YouTube today. You know what it does? It actually rings the bell at my house. It's super annoying, but if you do it, it just keeps on ringing. Oh, plus you can find out when the show is live and whenever we have new clips. Ring the bell. Oh no, not again.
How would I look walking the dog on the White House lawn? Would that be?
You know how much it costs you to start an account on tyt.com? Nothing. It's free. So you just go and register in about 2.5 seconds. Then you can chat with us during the show. We read those comments the most often. You chat with each other. Tons of people have become friends there. We're super interactive. We do a lot of polls for our paying members. We sometimes do polls that drive the direction of the show. So that's amazing. There's no other show that's this interactive. And our home base for that is tyt.com. Come join us right now.
When you were growing up, what did you want to be?
I think I was starting to think I don't want to do one thing, and I did live up to that.
Well, mission accomplished then, because Dave was a geologist, and now he's helped found the Young Turks. Even within TYT, you've done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So if you want to do different things, you nailed it. All right, last story to end on is a Dave story. Whenever there was something like obvious, glaring, he would go up and ask them about it. Like it'd be like a giant church, right? And somebody's standing in front of it. The usual Dave go, pull up right in front of them. Be like, hey, do you know where there's a church around here? And they're like, right here. It's right here.
Practical jokes. Spice up life a little.
We've been around for about 20 years and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. But we have been the largest online news show for now decades. Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
Hello and welcome to the second hour of the Young Turks. I'm Yasmin Aliyah Khan. I'm hosting today, and joining me is Waz Lambre. Waz, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be on.
Of course. So we're without Cenk again tonight. No problem. We have a lot of stories to get to. Actually, we should just get right into it. Let's roll the tape for the first story.
Charlie Kirk was a lifelong advocate for freedom of speech, civil political discourse, and the political engagement of youth. Representative Ilhan Omar's actions in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk are reprehensible and affect the dignity and integrity of the proceedings of the House and do not reflect the credibility on the House. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota be censured.
So last night, the House of Representatives rejected Nancy Mace's resolution to censure Ilhan Omar for comments that she made about Charlie Kirk in the wake of his assassination. Had the resolution succeeded, it would have removed Omar from her congressional committees. So what set conservatives like Mace off were remarks that Omar made about Kirk during an interview with Mehdi Hasan. So take a look.
It was really mortifying to hear the news, to see the video. You know, all I could think about was his wife, his children. That image is going to live forever. My heart does break for those babies. You know, Charlie was someone who once said, guns save lives after a school shooting. Charlie was someone who was willing to debate and downplay the death of George Floyd in the hands of Minneapolis police.
I think he called him a scumbag.
Right, have no regard, downplay slavery and what Black people have gone through in this country.
So some more on the resolution. This is from the Washington Post. It says the resolution also criticized Omar for reposting a video to X from an anonymous user who called Kirk a reprehensible human being who was spewing racist dog whistles in his last dying words. But she also repeatedly condemned the assassination as an unconscionable act of violence. And she defended her commentary in the Mehdi Hasan interview, saying, while I disagree with Charlie Kirk vehemently about his rhetoric, my heart breaks for his wife and children. I don't wish violence on anyone. My faith teaches me the power of peace, empathy, and compassion. Right-wing accounts trying to spin a false story when I condemned his murder multiple times is fitting for their agenda to villainize the left, to hide from the fact that Donald Trump gins up hate on a daily basis. Nonetheless, Mace has been on an absolute warpath against Omar, tweeting dozens of times about her over the past few days and repeatedly threatening to send her to Somalia. And in one instance, she said, if you celebrate murder, maybe Somalia can take you back. And in another tweet, she said, we would love to see you deported back to Somalia next. So that was when Ilhan Omar, she finally hit back at Mace and said, would love to see you get the help you need next. You belong in rehab, not Congress, which is very spicy, I think. She also said Mace was not well or smart, and ultimately the House did side with Omar. So the motion to essentially dismiss the resolution succeeded by a vote of 214 to 213. So just one vote, with 4 Republicans voting with the Democrats. And those Republicans were Mike Flood, Jeff Hurd, Tom McClintock, and Corey Mills. They also condemned Omar's comments, but said it was a First Amendment issue. So Mace immediately attacked them for their votes, writing on X, Ilhan Omar mocked the cold-blooded assassination of an innocent American husband and father. She supported ISIS. She supported the Muslim Brotherhood. She's incited political violence, and tonight Congress protected her. To which Omar responded, literally none of this is true, and this woman needs to get help. We have to stop allowing members who are experiencing mental breakdown to continue to work without getting them the help they need. This is an emergency. Let's help her before she hurts herself or one of us. I love this energy from Ilhan Omar, but she is just the latest victim in what we're seeing happen. at like a very disconcerting rapid speed since in the last week since Charlie Kirk was killed. And it obviously people are very, very concerned about where all this is going to lead. So much has happened. I know here in Texas, somebody was just a student at a college here was jailed for speaking out against Charlie Kirk, which is an actual violation of the First Amendment. Cancel culture is not, people not liking you because of the things that you say is not cancel culture. That is not a violation of your First Amendment because you can still say those things. People don't have to like you for the things that you say. But once the government gets involved and jails people for it, that is actually a violation. And what we're seeing now is the right is using all these claims that the left is condoning and celebrating this violence against Charlie Kirk, when really that is, I haven't really seen that, right? I know I don't celebrate it. Nobody that I've spoken to is celebrating it. I haven't seen anything celebrating the killing and the way it happened. None of it on any of the online forums that I've looked at. Maybe just some like off people somewhere, some nobodies, but of all like the people with any kind of streaming platforms or any kind of audience, they're not celebrating it. So the right is just perpetuating this idea that the left is celebrating Charlie Kirk's death when it just simply is not true. And then you have people like Nancy Mace, who is in Congress, speaking about another congressperson saying that she supports things like ISIS and the Muslim Brotherhood, I assume just because she's Muslim, but no, she's never supported those things. So what are your thoughts on this, Waz? And I don't need you to get prophetic on me, but like, what do you think is going to come from all of this?
I think in especially the early days after Charlie Kirk got assassinated, I think there's a level of grace one might bestow upon Republicans because the guy was so well connected and well liked that you could understand that there would be a deep emotional response. And that these people are responding emotionally and mourning somebody who they called a friend and a comrade, compatriot, and all of that. And we know that oftentimes people aren't of their soundest mind when they're emotionally distressed or, going through something that's deeply emotionally felt. You can understand some level of, all right, these people are saying crazy things. Congresswoman Mace being the first of which, she comes out in the first press conference and basically is like, Democrats have to wear this. If like there's a Democratic Party apparatus that's openly or even implicitly ever, encouraging people to go out and commit acts of violence against right wingers, like it just doesn't exist. And so, the only explanation for the lashing out is that this is just a good old fashioned crackdown. They're just using this as an opportunity to crack down on their enemies, whether that be Jimmy Kimmel, whether that be an attempt to censure Congresswoman Omar. And I think we're gonna see that, in various other areas of them using this as an opportunity to pretend that there's like anything that you would call a mainstream left, right? I get annoyed honestly about words and like the idea that the Democratic Party is somehow some left-wing party. Yeah, they're to the left of the Republicans, but they're not left wing. And the idea that any mainstream Democratic Party or adjacent institutions or, media companies or, activist groups that are of the mainstream, I think Mehdi Hassan said this too, like a TYT, a New York Times, a Majority Report, Pod Save 'em, like you name it. Like, where are you finding these democratic institutions where a bunch of people are advocating that right wingers get shot on the streets just for being right wingers? I think there's been a robust response online, some of which I don't agree with. Like, I don't think you should dance on a man's grave just because he had horrible politics. But like, that's stuff that existed online. And to pretend that that's some strain of institutional left-wing thought is ridiculous and out of step with anything that's in reality. But what they're gonna try to do, they're just gonna grasp for straws. They're gonna try to connect, this heinous act of violence with, left-wing, quote unquote, so-called groups. But what I would say to folks is, let's just say, God forbid, somebody shot Hassan Piker tomorrow and killed him, right? God forbid that happened. What do you think right-wing accounts on social media would be doing? You think they'd be speaking in hushed tones and being like, oh, we gotta pay respect to the fallen brother on the left. And, he debated people and he had very strong opinions and he was a very left fella, but he was give me a freaking break, okay? We're talking about Elon Musk's Twitter. The idea that the response from those people, from or a Mehdi Hassan, or you name it, somebody gets tragically gunned down, that these people, anonymous accounts on the internet, would just be in grief and just be giving these left wingers the utmost deference. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and we kind of know what they would do if somebody on the left was targeted in that way, because we've seen it happen before. Either they just pretend it didn't happen, it gets caught up in some other news cycle, or they mock it outwardly, and not just people on the internet, but elected officials will mock it. We saw what happened after Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked. We saw what happened after Josh Shapiro's house was burnt down. We saw what happened in Minnesota. It doesn't register with them. The argument is that, the way that Charlie Kirk was killed and the fact that so many people witnessed it and saw it was very, very jarring and very, very traumatizing for anybody who saw that video. I did not watch it. I was fortunate enough to not have stumbled upon it also, because I know a lot of people who were not trying to watch that video, but then it found them somehow. But, there is a lot of fear in this country, and this really is just kind of what should have been expected as the natural outcome of all of this fear that has been festering within our communities. And you mentioned, that so many people are just living online in these online worlds and they don't actually know what's going on outside of the world. And I know people who don't leave their neighborhoods, right? Let alone the suburb or their city. They don't really leave their neighborhoods very often, if ever, if they can avoid it. And so all they know of the world and of the big cities is that they're dangerous, because they sit at home and they watch Fox News all day and they see all this weird footage of scary things. And then they are even more incentivized to just stay where they are. But I was in LA last week and I had people in my life who were like, oh, it's so scary over there, be careful. And I'm like, are you joking? I'm fine, right? Nothing happened. I was fine. I had a great time. And shout out to Ilhan Omar, by the way, because she puts up with a lot of stuff from other members of Congress, from Republican members of Congress, because she's from Somalia, because she wears a hijab, because she's openly progressive and openly Muslim. And she's a very, very strong woman, because I don't know how she deals with what she deals with. So that said, let's go to our first break. We will be right back. Hey everybody, welcome to the social break. I'm going to check out some of your comments and see what you've been saying. So let's see. Over at tyt.com, these are the member comments. Don Data Dragon says, I love this duo so much. Wiz of Waz and Yaz, all we're missing is ZZ Top. That's fun. Yeah, thank you. ZZ Top, yeah, they have a house not that far from where I am, and it just went on sale. And I think they're about to turn it into like a really cool boutique hotel. So you heard it here first. Bloated Ego says, so the house can do some good. So the house can do some good. Yeah, I mean, I assume that they are capable of stuff. I assume that they are competent people in Congress, but they choose to be incompetent, or they choose to just sit there and just maintain a status quo and just be agents of inaction. I lives in America said this lady pivoted so fast, talking about Nancy Mace, after she was seen crying because she voted to release the Epstein files. Does she think nobody would notice? Mace is using Kirk's death to her political advantage almost more than anyone. And yeah, that is interesting because Nancy Mace, even when she was seen crying after the Epstein victims were there testifying in DC. She had to leave the room because she was so moved emotionally, and she got a lot of criticism for that because she has endured some sexual violence in her own past, so she can relate personally to a lot of these things. But she still supports Donald Trump, even though he has been accused of sexual misconduct and criminality. And also, people were calling it crocodile tears, and he said that she was being a little bit exploitative and trying to make a moment out of something really, really horrendous. So I don't know how true that is, but yeah, like this is just more griftiness that's happening. But at least this time she is very much in line with what we're seeing from a lot of other Republican Congresspeople. Benjamin says, oh wow, another beastly host combo. This is too much. I know we spoil you over here sometimes. Let's see. Huang Jun says, Nancy Mace is what you get when you train an AI chatbot exclusively on racist rage tweets. And you know what? Maybe one day we will learn that between us and the clankers, we're really not so different after all. Let's see what else we got. Mongoose Dragon says Trump is accelerating his authoritarian power grab. Yeah, and this Charlie Kirk disaster is only helping to amplify that. It has very nicely played into the overall agenda, which I think is why you're starting to already see so many conspiracy theories come out about who really was responsible for the death of Charlie Kirk. And I'm not gonna talk about those, but it makes sense that we're starting to see those things come to light and take hold within the overall zeitgeist, not just on the left, but also on the right. And Evening Tap over on Twitch said, okay, this is getting out of hand because that wasn't even that bad what Omar said. Same. All right, welcome back to the Young Turks. You have Yaz and Waz with you today. So we're gonna get right into our next story. Yesterday, a Louisiana immigration judge ordered the deportation of Columbia University graduate Mahmoud Khalil to either Syria or Algeria for allegedly omitting info from his green card application. So the order, dated 12 September by the immigration judge, asserted the lack of full disclosure on Khalil's green card application was not an oversight by an uninformed, uneducated applicant. Rather, this court finds with that respondent willfully misrepresented material facts. It is hereby further ordered that respondent be removed from the United States to Algeria or in the alternative to Syria, wrote the judge. So they were saying that this wasn't just an accident. He did this on purpose. He didn't just overlook it. He's a Columbia graduate, so he knew what he was doing. So this is just the latest move in the Trump administration's very drawn out efforts to deport Khalil over his involvement in the pro-Palestinian protests on Columbia's campus last year. So here's some reporting from Politico on it. For more than 3 months earlier this year, Khalil was held in detention in Louisiana after the Trump administration arrested him, invoking a rarely used provision of immigration law that allows the government to deport any non-citizen, even a legal resident, if the Secretary of State determines that the person's continued presence harms US foreign policy interests. In June, New Jersey federal judge Michael Farbiar's, a Biden appointee, blocked the Trump administration from deporting Khalil on foreign policy grounds. Days later, the judge ordered Khalil's release after determining that he was not a flight risk or danger to the community. However, this latest ruling comes from the Trump administration's assertion that when he applied for his green card in March of 2024, he did not disclose all of his memberships in different organizations or past employment. Specifically, the Trump administration has accused Khalil of neglecting to disclose that he had worked with a UN agency that assists Palestinian refugees, as well as membership in Columbia University Apartheid Divest, a coalition of student groups involved in pro-Palestinian demonstrations. And according to Khalil's lawyers, Khalil's work at the UN agency was actually an internship through his school, and it was thought to be considered coursework rather than employment, so that's why it was left off of there. Regarding the coalition, Khalil was apparently a mediator, not a member, and he allegedly took that role after he applied for permanent residency. So the question is, what happens now? Well, Khalil's lawyers, they have 30 days to appeal the judge's ruling and deportation order, which is what they plan to do. However, the situation has become a bit more dire. In a letter to the judge, Khalil's lawyers wrote this: They expect that process to be swift and that an appeal of the BIA decision, which would go to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, is unlikely to be successful, since they wrote the appeals court almost never grants stays of removal to non-citizens. As a result, they wrote, the only meaningful impediment to petitioners' physical removal from the United States would be this court's important order prohibiting removal during the pendency of his federal habeas case. And they wrote, nothing would preserve his lawful permanent resident status. Lawful being the key word there. Khalil has also commented on the situation, accusing the Trump administration of using, quote, fascist tactics. He said their latest attempt through a kangaroo immigration court exposes their true colors once again. When their first effort to deport me was set to fail, they resorted to fabricating baseless and ridiculous allegations in a bid to silence me for speaking out and standing firmly with Palestine, demanding an end to the ongoing genocide. Such fascist tactics will never deter me from continuing to advocate for my people's liberation. So yeah, so this has been going on for months, as he mentioned, as the articles have mentioned. And he said, all of this is being done in a bid to silence me, to stop me from speaking out against fascism and to stop me from speaking out against genocide that is happening in Gaza right now, that we can all see is happening unless we really, really don't want to see it. And like I said, this has been going on for months. And as of the last week, we have just seen all of that kind of rhetoric, all of those actions, right? They're actually doing something about these things. They're not just talking about deporting people. They're not just talking about jailing people, they are doing it now. And so we've seen a rapid exponential escalation of calls to just silence people. And they're not trying to tiptoe around it at all, right? They're saying this is what we're doing and who's gonna stop us? And you can't say anything anyway because you're a terrorist now. Like maybe, I don't know. They're already thinking of calling us all terrorists. So Waz, what is your take on all of this? And I wonder, are they making an example out of him, or can we expect to see similar cases just like this one?
It's definitely an example, and it's basically the United States government, excuse me, going after a lawful resident, a quote unquote legal immigrant, green card holder, for holding views that are opposed to the actions of a foreign nation. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. If Khalil would have been out on Columbia's campus saying, yo, I don't think that the US should have, hundreds of bases across the world. I don't believe in the military industrial complex. I don't think we should be intervening on behalf of other countries and working in collaboration with dictators and blah, blah, blah. The myriad of criticisms that people levy upon the United States as it pertains to its military and foreign policy. The fact of the matter is this guy would still be, he'd be fine if he were criticizing our own government. But the fact that this guy was criticizing the government of Israel, this administration has decided that is basically, an offense that's worthy of deportation. That's insane. And there's no other way to look at this. And, the courts, like Trump is basically gets whatever the hell he wants in the courts these days. And this technicality, like this doesn't even close to rise to the level of something. Oh, you might have omitted that you were a multiple convicted criminal in your country of origin or something crazy like that. This is that he didn't distinguish some organization he interned for while he was at Columbia studying. I mean, it's preposterous on its face. And yeah, just the fact that, again, just think about that. As an American citizen, you are under more scrutiny for criticizing the actions of a foreign government than of your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it really is preposterous. And it's also preposterous the lengths that they will go to just to find something to get you for, right? They're saying that he intentionally falsified a government document by leaving certain things off of his green card application, even though there is a very plausible explanation and reasonable explanation for why certain things were left off of that document. This is a permanent resident. That is a legal type of immigrant. This is somebody who is a student and what was a student at one of our universities. Like, this is someone who deserves to be here. And he was practicing his freedom of speech while he was here in the United States. And there's no reason why he should have expected any of this to happen to him for doing so. The things that he was involved with, those are very common things to also find on college campuses, especially a campus like Columbia, based in New York City, a very prestigious university. Come down a little bit in its prestige as of late, in large part because of what's happening to people like Khalil. But it's a very, very sad state of affairs. And I can only hope that after whatever is on the other side of all of this, that things will be reversed. I don't know how long that's gonna take. I have no idea, but that's really like the hope that I have to cling on to, because it's hard to find hope these days. And on that note, let's jump into our next story. Let's roll the tape.
You alone in the whole world have the power to persuade Prime Minister Netanyahu to stop the demolition of Gaza City, to stop the starvation of Palestine, and to stop the killing of civilians. If not now, when will you exercise that power to tell him to stop?
Sure.
And then for both of you,
but you do understand about October 7th.
Of course,
you do understand.
So believe me, I understand.
One of the worst days in the history of humanity.
So a new piece from the Wall Street Journal may have an answer to that reporter's question: why does President Donald Trump let Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just do whatever he wants? So oftentimes the Israeli government's actions go against the United States' best interest. For example, after Israel's strike on Qatar, Trump reportedly stated, "Netanyahu is effing me." And still, Trump just gives Netanyahu free rein despite all of the effing that is happening. A former Israeli ambassador to the US under President Bill Clinton told the Wall Street Journal, "I'm mystified, and so are many other Israelis. Netanyahu's under siege and makes mistakes. The only thing that's really working for him is Trump support." So with all of this, you've got to ask, why is Trump so unwilling to move against Netanyahu? What is he afraid of? Well, the Wall Street Journal offered a few different suggestions as to why he might be afraid. So one reason is that Trump and Netanyahu are kindred spirits, very sweet. People who know them say that that's possible. Both believes that they have faced persecution from their country's elites, including criminal trials, and both see themselves as outsiders reforming a corrupt system. Yes, these two very, very, very rich men are persecuted and they are oppressed. And you know what? I'm glad that they found somebody else in the world that they can relate to, because it's lonely at the top. And at least that's what I hear. I'm not up there. So the piece floats another possibility. Trump is genuinely just a proud supporter of Israel, and he takes pride in his close ties with Netanyahu. But then there is a much darker idea, and that is that the biggest problem with the Qatar strike may have been that it wasn't successful, and that's from Michael Oren, the former Israeli ambassador to the US under Netanyahu. The chances are, if our operation in Doha succeeded, Trump would not have condemned it. He would have taken credit for it. He likes winners, and that same logic might apply to Gaza. There has to be someone standing with an Israeli flag saying, "We won," Oren said. I think Bibi understands this about Trump. We all understand that about Trump too, right? He loves a winner. He doesn't like losers. He said so. He said it about John McCain. But the Wall Street Journal only kind of dances around what is likely the real reason for Trump's unceasing loyalty to Netanyahu. And here's what I mean. Another reason for the continued warm relations is the Israeli leader's influence with Congress and in Republican-centric media, according to people familiar with Netanyahu's thinking. Netanyahu often meets with US lawmakers in Israel. So what the Wall Street Journal does not mention is the enormous sums of money that pro-Israeli organizations spend on bribing members of Congress. This is something that we are very aware of as Americans, but here's what the Wall Street Journal had to say. They said AIPAC's PAC and AIPAC's Super PAC, United Democracy Project, spent nearly $126.9 million combined during the 2023-2024 election cycle, according to the FEC. And this includes more than $55.2 million in donations given to federal candidates, at least $45.2 million of which went to the campaigns of members of the new 119th US Congress. The PAC tallies its contributions as $31.5 million given to pro-Israel Democratic candidates and $21 million to pro-Israel Republican candidates. It trumpets that 96% of its endorsed candidates won their general election contest in 2024, and Sludge recently calculated that about 2/3 of members of Congress received campaign funding from AIPAC during the 2023-24 election cycle. Those numbers are astronomical. They're unbelievable. Even if we know how much AIPAC has an impact in our government, seeing those numbers, it's out of control. So furthermore, Miriam Adelson donated over $106 million directly to Trump. In exchange, she reportedly wanted him to allow Israel to annex the West Bank. And it has also been reported that she opposes a Palestinian state, but I suppose that's not a surprise or anything like that. But yeah, as I said, those numbers, seeing them and hearing them, just cannot wrap my head around it. And also, this is, it's not really saying anything, but just want to note that the Democrats are taking in more money than Republicans are from AIPAC. And as I said, it's not really a surprising thing. We have seen that our Democratic representatives in Congress really are not taking the steps that they need to speak out against Israel or to divest our country from Israel. They keep voting to send more money and more weapons to Israel, and they keep defending Israel. They still refuse to call it a genocide. They refuse to say the thing that so many human rights organizations around the world are saying, what so many other governments are saying. The United States will not break from Israel. And apparently Trump is directly profiting off of off of the United States complicity in what's happening in Gaza right now. So, Waz, what do you make of this? I would ask you if you ever see there being an end to Israel's influence in our country. I know that right now, Israel is losing support amongst the American people, unlike ever before, right? On the left, we don't like them. On the right, they don't like them. And we don't understand why we're still sending so much money over to Israel, and why the Israeli people have things like free healthcare and better higher education than we have over here. That's another story, kind of. So they are losing a lot of support. Benjamin Netanyahu also came out and was very distraught over the death of Charlie Kirk, which was, I thought, an interesting take coming from him of all people. He was condemning political violence and saying that it's not okay that people feel unsafe out there. Just unbelievable. What do you think about that, Waz?
I think there's a few things that folks have to understand. I don't think Trump just isn't a deeply ideological person. He kind of has his own opinions about certain things, but it doesn't follow some consistent, ideology, whether it be some neocon or some free market psycho person who's like a free market truther. Like he's not a person of the left. And so there are like these certain issues like tariffs that he's been crying about since basically the 1980s, but like that's about it. He's flip-flopped on abortion, he's flip-flopped on healthcare, like so many issues he's flip-flopped on because he isn't anchored by anything that's like some strong opinion or feeling about it. So I think the Israel-Gaza genocide, siege, war, whatever you want to call it, is one of those issues that Trump doesn't care about very deeply. And so you have an apathetic Trump on one side, and then you just straight up have an immense amount of entrenched pressure on the other side. You mentioned Shelley Adelson, who gave $100 million. The previous two Trump presidential campaigns, her and her husband, I think, gave $150 million. So that's $250 million total from the Adelson family alone. And we know they're staunch Zionists, staunch Israel supporters. We have the Israel lobby, which, is comprised of a bunch of prominent donors like the Adelsons, but like, Bill Ackman and all of these crazy rich billionaire types and a bunch of prominent people who Israel is like one of their main core issues, and they're very influential in terms of their lobbying efforts in Washington. So you have those people. Then, of course, you have the Christian Zionists, the Jesus freaks who think the Jews all need to live in Israel before Jesus comes back to kill them all and let the rest of the believers come to heaven. It's like a weird, convoluted thing, and Bibi's so good at manipulating these people. Like they take them for a joke, but whatever, it's support. Like these people genuinely, believe that Israel needs to be in the hands of the Jews, or whatever that even means, by the way, in order for Jesus to do the second coming. And as you know, fundamentalist Christians make up a vast, support of the GOP. So that's another constituent group. You talk about the military-industrial complex. We've sent it since the war started. It's been like 50 billion we've sent to Israel in government aid. And of course, all that is, it's a voucher to go out and spend billions of dollars with private for-profit companies. It's just enriching a bunch of people who have a massive influence in Washington. So there's another constituent group that's massively invested in this. And then, of course, because we're living in a gerontocracy and a lot of these people cut their teeth during the Cold War, a lot of the people in the sort of national security blob, so to speak, they came up during the Cold War when they're just pissed that Iran kicked the Shah out, did a revolution, and they're no longer influential there. They've had a vendetta against Iran since 1979, and they can't let go of it, right? And Israel is basically a beachhead from which they've always felt like they could launch their attack against an inevitable war against Iran to fulfill their fantasies of finally sticking it to them for having the audacity to have some level of autonomy in their country and not be ruled by some American puppet. So that's why you see the results that you see. It's not just one thing. It's a bunch of different forces coalescing to make this thing happen. But to answer your question, I think this is the end though. Like, I think this is the peak. Generationally speaking, nobody's going for this. It's literally only the oldest people in our country, people who are of a certain generation, who remember Israel as this sort of little engine that could of a country and not the most powerful hegemonic force in the entire region, right? Like, they're just not that anymore. They're not this plucky upstart anymore. And I think most people who didn't come of age during the time when you could legitimately say that about Israel just don't see them that way and don't understand why we have to coddle them and, basically advance their every single one.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on so much there, but to your one of your last points, the fact that this is such a gerontocracy, it is wild to think about that, like how many decades that these people have been active in our American government, that they were around for not just the Cold War, not just for what went on in Iran in the 70s, but also throughout the 90s. And just like, they're just always there.
Joe Biden got elected for the first time 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's like go
50 years ago.
That's not the way our government is supposed to work. And then, for Israel, I think that's so interesting. Why it's so, you study geography and then you study history and the geopolitics and how it's all intertwined, right? Because you really have to have a good understanding of geography before you can even think about what's going on over there. Else it's not gonna make sense to you. You can stare at a map all day if you want, if that's gonna help. But as far as Israel, yeah, they were like the David and Goliath. They were the David, they had the Star of David. The formation of Israel was very controversial even at the time, right? Like, we know how Israel was created. It was created by the way a lot of places are. Some British guy drew a line on a map somewhere and said, here, do this. And then, there's been chaos ever since. And, with Israel, there was a lot of, just a lot of forgiveness there or a lot of compassion there, I will say, because it was seen as like a reparational amendment, like just here, you have suffered so much, and they did, right? No one's denying that. So you deserve something. But today, that Israel is a different Israel from the one that was there. So we have to take a break, but we will be right back. All right, welcome back to the break. We're gonna get to some comments and see what's going on over there. What is this? What am I looking at? Okay, TYT member comments. Tio 1790 says, history will not look upon us fondly. And you know what? I think about that quite a bit. I like to think that I try to be on the right side of things, because I feel like if you lead with some kind of compassion, humanity, like, you're never going to be on the wrong side of things. I'm never going to celebrate something like genocide or children dying or whatever it is that we're talking about. But as a whole, as a nation, this is a very, very dark period in our history. Dragon with the girl tattoo says, arrest first, invent charges later. Yeah, and I think we're gonna start to see a lot more of that. And that's in regards to Mahmoud Khalil and what happened to him and his pending deportation to maybe, the Middle East, or what was it, Algeria or Syria? Benjamin says, I swear, Yaz used to seem a little nervous to read comments and all that. If I'm right, and she has grown and gained more social confidence or something, I don't know, big Anya. Thank you. I don't know. It is very weird to be on camera. Like, I don't know if people understand that from the other side of things, but it's very strange to sit here and talk in my house, in my room, and people are just watching. So I think I don't know if people know this about me, not to make this about me too much, but I never wanted or thought I would be an on-camera person. I always figured I'd be behind the scenes, but here we are. And yeah, I've like to think I've gotten a little bit better at it since I've been doing it. Bloated Ego says, not mourning Charlie Kirk's death does not necessarily mean that you are celebrating it. Of course, death should not whitewash who you had been in life. I think too many people think it should. If this is still a free country, you have the right to mourn or not mourn whomever you want, and that is absolutely true. Yeah, it's just the fact that the right is trying to condemn people on the left for not mourning some guy who has never really been just kind to people on the left, right? Kind to people of different races, of different religions, of different sexualities, of different genders. He has been so unkind to so many people, and his death does not erase that. And something that I think that's interesting that we're seeing is a lot of people on the right, in their effort to memorialize Charlie Kirk, they're really not pulling a lot of quotes. They're not quoting the things that he said. They're not looking at the things that he did. They're just celebrating the way that he was not afraid of debate, even though that was kind of the joke when he was alive, wasn't it? That he would just go onto college campuses and ambush college students who were half his age and unprepared for a debate. So, to each their own, I wouldn't say that was the worst thing he did, but it's interesting that that is what he's being celebrated for now in his death. Let's see. Yeah, Dragon with a Girl Tattoo said, I never celebrated Kirk's death, but I did point out the hypocrisy of people's reactions to it. But to the right, that is hate speech. And yeah, I think we are entering into a very, very strange time where hate speech is, we're just told what it is and isn't. Welcome back to the show. Yaz and Waz with you here. We have one more quick story for you before we go to the bonus episode. So let's get right into it.
So is it, again, sheer happenstance that individuals show up at a restaurant where the president is trying to enjoy dinner in Washington, D.C. and accost him with vile words and vile anger, and meanwhile, he's simply trying to have dinner? Does it mean it's just completely random that they showed up? Maybe, but to the extent that it's part of an organized effort to inflict harm and terror and damage to the United States, there's potential investigations there.
All right, that was Deputy Attorney General and Trump's former personal attorney, Todd Blanche, telling CNN anchor Caitlin Collins that the women publicly protesting the president in Washington, D.C. could be looking at RICO charges. Yes, RICO charges, and those are typically used against large organized crime units in cases where no one individual commits an illegal act, but collectively they all engage in illegal behavior. For example, RICO is what finally brought down the mob. The group that is being discussed is called Code Pink, and they went viral last week when they confronted the president along with others like JD Vance and Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller at a restaurant in Washington, D.C. And by confronted, I just mean that they were yelling things at him. Look at this.
Trump is the Hitler of our time. Free D.C., free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time. Free D.C., free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time. He's terrorizing communities in D.C.
Go, time to go.
He's terrorizing communities all over the world. Free D.C., free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time.
All right, so Trump, unwilling to accept any kind of criticism, is now weaponizing his DOJ, not the DOJ, but his DOJ against these activists for daring to speak out against him. And before we go on, let's hear more from the exchange between Collins and Blanche.
But were those women in the restaurant inflicting harm or terror or damage by protesting the president of the United States? I mean, they were just shouting basically in his vicinity.
I mean, repeat what you just said. I mean, honestly, so you're asking whether there's damage done by 4 individuals screaming and yelling at the president of our United States while he's trying to have dinner. That can't be a serious question. That cannot be a serious question. I mean, it's true that there's a difference between shouting and committing an assassination,
There were supporters outside
which is what
as
happened
well.
to Charlie.
Well, it is nice that Todd Blanche can concede that yelling in a restaurant is not quite the same thing as assassinating someone, but Blanche did continue arguing that the right needs to get ahead of the dangerous, loud left.
Well, it depends. There's nothing wrong with peaceful protests, and nobody has ever said so. Of all the people in this country, President Trump knows exactly what it's like to have people protest against him. But what he's talking about and what the administration is talking about is organized efforts by individuals who are not present at the protests, but they're funding these protests, and they're not protests. They're inflicting damage and harm and actually assaulting officers. They're damaging vehicles, and that's the conduct that we're trying to stop.
I just love Caitlin Collins' face as she's listening to all of this. So Code Pink released a statement regarding their efforts, calling out the president for attempting to intimidate those who are speaking out against him and his administration. They said there is not some sort of big conspiracy around disruptions and confrontations like at Joe's. We practice nonviolent and non-threatening free speech. It is as simple as that. Anyone who believes in free speech should be appalled at this attempt to criminalize it. And this is all part of Republican efforts to actually suppress free speech in Charlie Kirk's name, especially on Monday. Trump said that he was considering naming Antifa a terrorist organization, even though Antifa is hardly an organization at all. And he suggested that he would revoke tax-exempt status for liberal nonprofit groups and possibly explore criminal charges against groups or individuals that they deem to be targeting conservatives, whatever that even means, right? We just watched a whole exchange between Caitlin Collins and Todd Blanche, where Todd Blanche was like incredulous that Caitlin Collins was saying all they were doing was yelling at him, right? And he was trying to say this is violent behavior, or like at least it leads to that. And he said, yeah, there's a difference between yelling at someone and assassinating someone. It's like, obviously, but why are we even having this conversation in the first place? I was laughing through that exchange because it was so ridiculous, but the reality is that these are things that they're actually implementing and following through on, and that is a very dangerous place for us to be in as a country. What are your thoughts, Waz?
Again, this is just par for the course in terms of the crackdown these people are trying to enact on those who they deem as their opposition. Everything that he said is patently ridiculous. This speech is protected under the Constitution. And more to the point, we live in some of the most undemocratic times of our existence. And what do I mean by that? To pretend that the will of the people is being expressed by the Trump regime and organization, I think is a joke. So we don't even get democracy in terms of the people's will being exercised by the folks that they duly elected. The idea that we can't even have, we disrupt your freaking little dinner. Okay, like you get to be the leader of the United States of America. Some ladies said some bad words to you while you were at your dinner. Boo-hoo, whoop-de-doo, bruh. Like, get over it. The idea that this guy has been wounded by this. Like, he's not a nobody. He's not a private citizen. He's the freaking president. Like, by definition, he works for those women that were screaming at him at that restaurant. It's just crazy that this chump lawyer would get up there and talk the way that he did.
Yeah, and people like Donald Trump, they don't think of their actual constituents as anybody that they are beholden to or that they owe anything to. He's just very annoyed, and he's like, you know what? I have a whole DOJ that I'm basically controlling, a whole other branch of government that I'm able to wield, in whichever litigious direction I want to. So he's doing that, and why wouldn't he? And what he's trying to do is he's trying to suppress opposition. He's trying to suppress voices. He's trying to impinge on our freedom of speech. in a real way, not just in the way that the right always tries to say that the left is doing. And he's trying to just come for all of our First Amendment. And that's what's happening. We're seeing what's happening in media. We're seeing what's happening with just regular people who are just saying things loudly in restaurants. None of this is normal, and we can never pretend that it is. We can never let ourselves get to that point, all right? So with that, we're going to break, and I will see you guys in the bonus episode. Bye.